Thank you. So are you going to give me a clicker or what do I do?
I'll just do it for you.
Oh, okay, cool. So my name is Mike Steely, and Jordan wanted me to come today to kind of give not really an overview of the Venture Center as much as the story of how I think entrepreneurship is impacting the community here. So I'd like to go, I'm going to start kind of way back. This dates myself from a standpoint of some of the folks in this room, but basically all this kind of started for me. All this started for me when I was in college at Hendrix, and I took my first course that included a computer. First time I'd ever seen a personal computer. All right, back in the 80s, we were using a program called Lotus 123, and at the time I was interning at Stevens Corporation, and at Stevens we'd done the same thing. We actually had we'd gone from just a terminal into something called this thing everybody just called a computer. Well, we were taking and building out a database of mergers and acquisition information by cutting out articles out of the Wall Street Journal. I mean, we didn't even have highlighters back then. We had to literally cut the articles out and then enter the information about who the transaction people were, what the transaction basically cost, and then where it was. Because just that much information was hugely enlightening for Stevens Corporation, which at the time was the largest bank off of Wall Street. And that was my introduction to kind of the impact of what technology, the impact of even on a huge business could be. And then from there, Charles Morgan interviewed me at Hendrix for a job and convinced me that these things that called computers were going to be really good and making marketing better than it was previously. So I ended up going on a technology path for a long time. It grew up, what we had was CCX on into Axiom. Then went over, did the same thing for Alltel with what was Systematics, a transition to Alltel Information Services. And then as that sold, I got my first lesson in what corporations really meant. Because as that sold to Fidelity, the entire area that I was focused on, which was e-commerce and strategy in the banking area, went away. It went down to Florida. So we had a outfit out of Nashville, Tennessee, that we drove over and took tests on them determining what we should do with our lives from that point. It's one of these consulting companies. And the first thing they told me was, you shouldn't be working in a company. You should actually go out and do your own thing. And in fact, they highly recommended that I never work for another company again. I don't know what that was about, but I think they were right. So I did the natural thing anybody would do at this point who basically had no skills and not much of an idea. I became a consultant. I decided I would go back and start helping small businesses to grow. I had an accounting degree and a CPA and figured I might as well finally use it. And so I traveled 5 states and talked to business owners. I helped people develop franchises. I helped them market their companies. And I got to meet a really cool amount of people. And a lot of people doing a lot of things that they kind of all had something in common. That first slide. And so Jordan asked me to kind of list one lesson learned. And basically this is it. What I learned from all those people was, be decisive in what you do. You have to make decisions, and you have to move. 3 more.
Got it.
Yeah, because it's fun to plan. It's easy to build something, relatively easy, but it's really, really hard to make it grow. That's the part of what of what happens in a business where people fall down. You can get ideas all day long, and I do, and I love it, and I love being here, and I love being part of this room and talking to people. But ultimately, what we all have to do is get to the point where we can grow. All right. So with that, the AVC's mission, and this is just kind of my statement of it, is helping entrepreneurs get things done. Makes sense, right? So I've tried this out. It's kind of our tagline. It doesn't really work. You've been hegged. Isn't anything that anybody understands. But I think it gets the point across. Okay, this is not going to end up being our tagline, but I'm not in charge of marketing. But just getting the point across, though, that's really what the AVC is attempting to do, is to help entrepreneurs get things done, whether that be technology, whether that be connecting into the community or whatever. That's basically what we're all about. So let me give you a little background nationally on what's occurring. And this guy, there's a term called startup communities. Anybody read this book, Startup Communities? Great book. A couple of people have read it. Brad Feld, this guy on the left, wrote this. Hit the next slide. Based around something he called the Boulder Thesis. Anybody heard of the Boulder Thesis? A couple of people maybe. And yeah, there you go. Jordan has. And what the Boulder Thesis states is that essentially there's no reason why innovation, ideas, and growth can't occur anywhere in the country, okay? Because it happened in Boulder, Colorado, where Brad had moved to, and he helped to grow this out, where basically they have about 100,000 people, and they now have one of the most thriving startup communities with venture capital investment and large companies that have grown and thousands of jobs that have been created. But he came up with what was basically a template that later became the book, and his idea centered around the fact that the startup community must be led by entrepreneurs. You have to have the people that are in this room who come to the events, who take on a leadership position, who do something to get other people engaged for growth. From there, you have all sorts of other people, and we won't go through this whole thing, but essentially, if you look at having entrepreneurs, having it led by entrepreneurs, you have to be in it for the long term. This is not a short-term deal. He says it's about 20 years to grow this out. I think we're, and this was 5 years ago when he wrote the book, I think we're probably closer to a decade now of these growth patterns. So we'll be growing this for a long time in Little Rock to see things grow out. But you'll start to see hits, and you'll start to see good things. And then create regular events to engage people. So the very first thing that the Venture Center did, literally, when Jordan came on board with the chamber, is he and I got the opportunity to go to Kansas City and go to the 1 Million Cups national event they were having, and we ended up, voila, here we are. This was the start of our regular events to get things going, and it's turning out pretty well, I think. So let's talk about and shift to Little Rock for just a second. And I want to talk about momentum because I think it's really important. Last spring, we had a very fortunate series of events occur in which what happened in Boulder, I think, started here in Central Arkansas. You had events like Bar Camp up in Conway. The traditional events like the Governor's Cup was one that was happening at about that same time. Think Big Arkansas, and which was Startup Arkansas Lee Watson had created, and you see Brad's picture up there. Brad is one of the speakers that we got to come in and actually participate in it. He flew into Little Rock to come be part of the startup initiative here, right? Pretty cool. Very well-known national guy. Now, he happens to also be an Arkansan. He was born in Blytheville at the Air Force Base at the time when it was open, and he hadn't been back since. I think he was about 5 years old, but now he's a big fan. Now he's participating, he's helping, he's getting things to grow. Scott Case, the other gentleman that helped start Startup Americas up there also came in. He was one of the guys who started Priceline.com. Made by Few, another one of these really cool events that's coming up, and Gabe over here can tell you about that one. It's coming up soon. When I went to Made by Few last year, which is the first time I'd been there, I sat by two guys, and one was from New Mexico, and the other one was, I believe he was from Alaska. They were from all over the country, people coming to Little Rock, Arkansas, because what they said is, I want to come check out what's happening here, because I've been hearing good things are occurring. That's what Brad is talking about in the Boulder Thesis. Ultimately, then, we had this guy over here who decided to come back home from Missouri and bring his buddy, who's up in Des Moines, and they brought in a concept that we'd never seen in the state here before called Startup Weekend. People doing things, those entrepreneurial-minded people taking the initiative and growing and percolating things up. None of these are really coordinated, okay? These are not things that we have had a master plan around. It's about everybody in the audience sitting and thinking things up and trying what works and improving and growing, and that's what this is all about. My little initiative, my part of this last summer was called Sparkable. I created a series of camps loosely based upon what happened at Startup Weekend, in that it was youth camps for innovation. During that time frame, I had a gentleman by the name of Brian Hostow, who is an attorney here in town and an angel investor, who had enrolled his son in the camp and had come up to me and said, "Hey, what do you think about a physical location for doing this in Little Rock?" He said, "I've got a building, down on Main Street. Would you be interested in taking a look at what we could do?" Heck yeah, what a great idea, Now, ultimately, we bumped into the mayor. Things went from there. We grew into what is essentially this now. It's a 501c3. You can skip that one. So, and into these programs that we have, and ultimately, we will be moving over across the corner in the bottom of the Block 2 lofts into a 8,000 square foot facility that the city of Little Rock has invested in to put in so that entrepreneurs can get things done. Pretty cool.
Hey, Mike, I'll go ahead and leave these slides up.
Yeah,
we're approaching our 6 minutes, though.
Yeah,
so.
Go back to the other one. We can
Okay,
skip the last one.
cool.
Yeah,
This
so
one?
I'll just leave this up here, and we'll talk about this as you all have questions.
Awesome.
Anything?
Thank you, Mike.
So as a high schooler, what are your focus, what is, do you have a plan to focus more on, the high school entrepreneurs? Because I know my school is 3 blocks from where I live.
Mhm.
So how are you planning to bring that level of customers in?
Well, as a high schooler, number one, I'm glad you're here today. That's so awesome, and I'm particularly excited. And anybody who doesn't know Sydney, has never met her, go up, shake her hand after this. She's already presented at 1 Million Cups and did a fabulous job with the whole thing. She's got her own company going, so there's a tremendous story behind that. But from our perspective, and this is my experiences, and I've taught roughly probably about 3,500 youth in Arkansas just in the past couple of years, these innovation concepts. And what I've found is when we have high schoolers, you can get them together once or twice by themselves because they're high schoolers and they're scary most of the time, in packs. But ultimately, we want those high school people to get engaged in what's going on here, because the connections and the collisions that occur with you talking to the person next to you or over here, and you need some advice. Some of the people that are more seasoned, I like to call it seasoned, not older, are people who can really, you can connect best with. So my advice is come to these, and when we have the facility there, yes, we will have some specific dedicated high school things going on, but most of the time I just want you involved in the group.
Eric.
Hi, Eric Caldwell with WebJot. Are y'all going to focus primarily on new startups, or maybe even companies that are still in startup mode some years later and have hit that wall? Are y'all going to help with those kinds of companies as well?
The answer to that would be yes, but we are a startup ourselves. So we effectively will be moving in directions that strategically make sense for the community to grow. These are the things that we're focusing on first, because Lee and I spent about 6 months going around and asking entrepreneurs and even corporations like Axiom and Fidelity and these guys what it is they needed out of a startup community. What did you need from entrepreneurs in Central Arkansas? And these were the 3 things that came up. Basically, the community side, which I think we're getting covered really well. I think this is where we're really nailing it at the moment, all right? We're doing an excellent job of having weekly and monthly events and meetups. If you haven't been to a meetup, meetup.com, right, that logo there is something we're hosting now, I think 6 various meetups at any given time. The women founders, minority founders. We have a lean startup meetup tomorrow night. Mr. David's leads that one for us. We've got technology meetups, and the idea is that we find a champion for something, and when it's a subject that has a group of 2 or more who are interested in getting together, we'll help to sponsor that. And we typically, provide adult beverages, for that as well. And that's a rumor, and it's true. And so, sorry, Sydney, sorry, but that's where the high schoolers, But so get involved in that. And then we have a program called a huddle hour. Our huddle hours range from, and which is effectively it's a one-on-one conversation, very frank, honest conversation about the current state of your business. Who in this room's had a huddle hour? Raise your hand, a few of you. Yep, I've seen several of you. It is intended as a starting point for someone to basically sit down and say, I'm here and I want to go here. How the heck am I going to get that done, right? And what we try to do, and we use a series of mentors in this. We have 4 primary mentors right now that provide the huddle hours, and then we connect people beyond that with the individual mentorship that they need. So it could be that you have a product line that has kind of slacked off and you need help there. It could be in manufacturing, it can be in technology, it could be whatever. We're going to go out and we're going to search and find that person to get you the help.
Any other questions?
No?
Questions?
I have a comment.
Yes.
Amazing. Get involved.
Mr. Chamberlain?
John Chamberlain. Mike, you and I had a kind of an interesting experience with matching internships and a need for an internship this week.
Mm-hmm.
Have you given any thought to maybe having one of these organizations have a web page that would help facilitate that, or some sort of Twitter feed or anything that would just let people be aware where the opportunities are?
That is a great idea. If it's a Twitter feed, I'm going to leave it up to this guy or this guy over here. But what we are building is a member portal, and as a startup, our resources are fairly scarce, and we're planning and re-strategizing all the time, daily, and that's one of those things, though, that is a priority for us, is to flesh that out, because what we will effectively have is a way for people to go out and to find information such as the connecting points on an internship, or even a technology need, within an entrepreneurial company, somewhere you can post that information along with programming and things like the Million Cups videos and stuff like that. It's a great idea.
Yes.
How much is what?
Service.
Oh, the service. I'm sorry. Yes, the venture. That's a very good question, because we intended originally for this to be the traditional equity-driven acceleration, all this fancy terminology that's out in the startup community and world. But what we found is most effective in cities like Washington, D.C., and Nashville, and Dallas, and Chicago is a non-profit driven entity that has a very low threshold for entry. And effectively, from our perspective, it's $150 a year to join as a member, to get into going to the deep dive kind of educational and members related things we do. If you just want to come and have a huddle hour or go to a meetup group or whatever, it's free. It's just it's things that we're doing. But the $12 and roughly 50 cents a month or whatever that is, I guess I should have a good market pitch around that, gets you all of these 4 events, and then your first 3 mentorship sessions are the next 3 hours of it are included with that. And then somebody, if they need more mentorship, and on average you need 3 or 4 of those sessions, then you can always come back and say, hey, I'd like to kind of hire a mentor more. And basically, it's we do that to keep the doors open, and it's like $99 for 3 more sessions. So your total cost in a year is likely not going to be more than $250.
Questions? Okay, I have a question. So can you talk a little bit about the difference, kind of one of the difference makers with the Venture Center in terms of where the mentorship comes from? Because, I feel like we're facilitating a whole lot of stuff, but what's the unique value of the mentorship process for the Venture Center?
The mentorship program itself is designed to be a very metrics-driven program. So there's really two main components to its success, and it's still in its infancy. Is number one, we have to find mentors. Okay, so we have to find people with skill sets that match up with things that people need. And we have a growing list of people that have said, hey, I'm willing to come and invest an hour or two a month in helping out an entrepreneur. Now, we want our mentors to become members of the group as well, because we want those mentors to come to all these events. We want these mentors to have as many collision points as they can with entrepreneurs, because it makes the whole thing better. It makes the whole thing work. So quality mentors, seasoned people, people who have been through starting a company, growing it, selling it. People have been through starting a company, growing it, and it falling flat on its face. People who have a particular skill set, a technology, a management, a marketing, that can help someone else with wherever they are in their stage of business. All those things are extremely important. And then we're going to measure it. Then we're going to track that, and we're going to ensure that there's a quality level, but also quantitatively, that we can let people know how other people in Arkansas are helping, helping the growth of companies, basically. And this extends ultimately way beyond just the Venture Center here.
Cool. Yeah. Question? No. Oh, okay. Any last questions? All right. Well, Mike, like we end every single week, what's the one thing that us as a community can do to help the Venture Center?
Get engaged to get things done.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Mike. Appreciate it.